Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of Grassroots Racing Show.
I'm Doug Thompson. Welcome to the Grassroots Racing Show. As you can tell, I'm kind of missing my sidekick, my brother, co-host Roger Thompson. Him and my sister are in Branson today. But we're going to have an awfully good show. We've got Bob Bolles from Circle Track Magazine. He's going to be with us in just a minute. You can see I've got the earpiece in. So let's go and see if we've got Bob with us right now. Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Doug. Good morning.
Very good. Thank you. And you're in Florida right now, aren't you?
Yes, I live just north of Daytona Beach, Florida, in Ormond Beach.
Beautiful area. We've been down there, of course, raced in Daytona, Ocala, and have been to Speed Week a number of times. All of that's a beautiful area. And Bob, you just came back from the Circle Track Tour for 2012. I think you call it the Great American Tour.
Yeah, it's the AMSOIL Great American Tour. AMSOIL's our major sponsor, and we've been touring the country the past 3 years, Southeast 2 years ago, Northeast last year, and then we did kind of the upper Midwest, and we'll be doing the West Coast next year for the end of the tour.
Yeah, you took off. I think you started in Michigan this year on this particular tour, and then you wound up coming right through our area. You were at Lakeside and Heartland Park in Topeka, and you wound up at Salina Speedway in, of course, Salina, Kansas. And then I know you and Karen were ready to go home.
Well, it was 4 months total on the road, continuous. We used to do 2 months and then 2 months and take a 2 month break in between. But this year, with being so far away, we did the whole thing together. So yeah, we were glad to get home. It took about 2 weeks to get reacquainted with everything here.
And it always does when you come back from a trip like that. But Bob, let me begin first with Circle Track. You write Track Tech article for Circle Track, and I can tell you for over the years, anytime I get my Circle Track magazine, the first article I turn to is yours. I read it to see what other experiences racers are having and the questions that are presented to you and how you've handled those questions. Now, you've got to have an awful lot of knowledge about chassis setup to answer those questions. Where do you get your background from, Bob?
Well, I grew up here in Daytona since 1952. I was here before the track, and I used to go out to the pits all the time and hang out with the crews there. And I actually had a whole other career before racing. I was in civil engineering and surveying. And in 1991, I sold the business I had and devoted full-time to racing. So from there, I developed Chassis R&D, which is my company. I developed software. I worked with race teams all over the country ever since then. I still do on a weekly basis. So I think from developing the software and routines and working with the race teams, I was able to gain a lot of knowledge, first-hand knowledge of the race cars. So that's what helps me to write for Circle Track.
And you've done some spotting at some of the race tracks as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I do some spotting. I really enjoy that part of it. I do. There's a local team here that runs it 24 hours at Daytona, so I get in a lot of spotting in just a one-day time. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. What sticks out about the most recent tour that you did when you started in Michigan and you wound up in Kansas and then went home? What was the consensus you gleaned from the racing industry, the health of it, and just what's going on with the economy as it affects the racing?
It seems what we've always said in Circle Track is that racing is a lifestyle. It's not really a sport or a thing that families can do with or without. It's not like buying a boat to keep them for a couple years and selling it. Racing seems to be a lifestyle for these people, and I don't see the racing slowing down. The racers may be cutting back on their budgets and somewhat, but racing's still very strong as far as short track racing, as far as we can see.
Yeah, it looks like it is in our area too. I hear the same things you're talking about there, that racers being a little more cautious about where they go and the distance they cover, and they've got to be aware of making their equipment survive. As you go out on the Great American Tour, Bob, and people, of course, would know you, certainly from Circle Track Magazine. When you go to these tracks, they come up to you and say, Bob, will you take a look at my car? It's not handling, or watch me race and give me some feedback. Did you get a lot of that?
Yeah, I definitely get people that read the magazine, and we always go to the setup part of the deal. I mean, it's just, and what's amazing to me is these racers will open up and tell me everything they're doing, and I don't think they would do that with anyone else. I think it's because they know I won't be sharing that information, but also once I understand everything they're doing, I can maybe better help them or work on what they're doing. So that's the fun part of the tour is talking about the setups and everything, because that's what I do.
Well, Bob, we're going to take a break here in just a second. When we come back, I want to talk to you about your questions and answers for the track tech and how you address those, because those are some tough questions. Hang on, Bob. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, I'm Pat Neal. Thanks for tuning in to watch this edition of Grassroots Racing.
Welcome back to the Grassroots Racing Show. I'm Doug Thompson. We're filming today from the Kansas Auto Racing Museum, and as I mentioned in the last segment, we're visiting with Bob Bolles from Circle Track Magazine. Bob writes the tech article, Track Tech, and you can get it anytime you pick up the Circle Track Magazine, because it's an important section in there. I always turn to it when I get my Circle Track Magazine, and I go to that because Bob's got the tough questions that other racers have questions of, and when we do this show, those are the same type questions that sometimes come from our audience back to us, and I don't mind telling Bob that I steal his answers because those are good answers. Bob, thanks for being with us. And I steal your answers because when I get it, sometimes, because I've been around a long, long time, somebody will come up and they'll say, well, you know, my car's doing this or that, and I'll oftentimes use my own experiences, but I'll go back to what you have written in the Track Tech articles, Bob, because it's a well-researched and a very good job by you. Kind of run us through how that happens, that you receive the letters, the correspondence or emails, and how you go about addressing the response.
Well, I've been fortunate in my career to work with a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge, and to meet a lot of teams that are racing at the top levels. And when you see how they handle these situations and what they think is important with a race car, I'm just actually passing on information that I've been fortunate enough to get. One thing about the Track Tech Q&A, about 3 years, I've been at Circle Track about 10 years now. About 3 years into writing for Circle Track, we came up with the idea of me doing a column, and the beginning of Track Tech is actually a dissertation or a column on some subject that I come up with every month. And that's been really important for me, and I think a lot of the readership, because we deal with issues such as green racing, the safety issues, the head and neck restraints, and now the most recent is the concussion problems we're having. Talking about affordable racing, talking about stock appearing. Stock appearing has become a big issue now. The fans kind of want to see cars that look more like what they drive on the street, so we're getting into that. But we can get into a lot of issues and talk about a lot of things that are important to the racers and to the future of short track racing in that column. So that's what's been fun for me.
Do you see a particular theme, Bob, that the racers really interested in now? Is it the safety? Is it the handling of the car? Or is there a general theme to the correspondence you get?
You know, of course, a lot of the correspondence is questions about handling and problems with the car. But whenever we do an article or a discussion about safety or things like that, especially the concussion thing, that kind of came out of nowhere. That was a thing where I was contacted by Jeff Chaska, who's having problems right now from repeated concussions. And when we printed my little article on that, we got a lot of response from the industry, from people that said, you know, I know somebody, or I've had those similar problems. And so we really got a lot of response from that particular subject.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I know certainly for the family structure that certainly applies, because when you visited the Auto Racing Museum on the Great American Tour, I had told you that when first time I raced at Daytona was the same time that Neil Bonnet got killed. And I remember receiving the call from my wife saying, what exactly are you doing here in this sport? Because unlike other sports that maybe get injuries, this is one that can result in death. And so the safety aspect certainly applies straight across the board, because the family has concerns there, and so does the race car driver. And undoubtedly you've seen a lot of changes to the safety aspect with race cars over the years, Bob.
Now, what we know now, and this goes back 30 years, back into the early 80s and late 70s, a lot of the deaths in racing were caused by neck injuries, and I don't think we knew a lot about that until Dale Earnhardt was killed at Daytona, and that kind of exploded everything. I mean, everything moved at a lightning pace then, and now the head neck restraints are available, and we're sponsored by Next Gen on our tour. They came out with a really nice, more affordable neck restraint, but that's really made a big difference in our sport as far as safety. I think that we almost removed one of the primary ways you can be seriously injured or killed in a race car by people using head and neck restraints. So I would urge everybody that's listening to think about getting one of those, no matter what kind of racing you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice. And I remember years ago, of course, fire was a major concern. And when you came into the Auto Racing Museum, you saw the pictures of the fire incident at the Kansas State Fairgrounds in Hutch in 1974. And there were 17 race cars burned up. And there was, of course, a tremendous response to that with fire suits. And there was in-car fire extinguishers and a lot of changes that we now take pretty much for granted. Also, Bob, you saw one of the situations that I think I saw recently that pretty much ties into just what you're talking about is Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the chase, and because of concussions, he recognized the own situation and then set out for a couple of weeks of the chase.
That was an important decision for him, but I think that it showed everybody that races that, hey, you know, if Dale thinks that he needs to set out for his own well-being and for the future well-being, I mean, I think one of the quotes Dale said is, when I'm 50 and 60 years old, I want to be Dale Jr. I don't want to be incapacitated where I can't meet people and have fun and go out and do things. So this was discussed on a show recently on Wind Tunnel. And Kyle Petty said, you know, one time when he broke his leg real bad, all he told the doctor was, I want to be able to walk when I'm 50 and 60 years old, so just do what you have to do. And I think that's what racers have to remember. You've got a life after racing, and so you need to take care of yourself. And if you're getting to that point where you're getting too many concussions or too many injuries, you need to think about maybe stepping out.
Good advice, Bob. And folks, we've been visiting with Bob Bolles from the Circle Track magazine. Bob, thank you so much for making yourself available. Enjoyed it. You take care.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, Bob. Bye.
This is Scotty Anderson, and you're watching my favorite show, Grassroots Racing.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that interview segment with Bob Bolles of Circle Track magazine. Very informative guy. Pick up the Circle Track magazine. You'll enjoy it. Roger, welcome back from Branson.
Well, thanks. It's good to be back, and I hate to admit it, but the racing season's about over, and we're going to end the season like we always do with a little help from a guy over here in Missouri, Shop Talk, Tech Talk with Yancey Shepard. Mike Kraft's going to be doing an interview with him, and we'll learn how to get these cars ready for the next season. And at some point in time in one of these programs, we're going to talk about how to get these drivers and pit crew people ready for the next season.
Let's head to Smithville, Missouri with Mike Kraft.
Well, race fans and racers, we are back to Yancey Shepard's place up in Smithville, Missouri. And today we're going to be talking with Yancey Shepard about, boy, the season's over. What should a guy do as far as deciding what to do with his motor? And what about some of the stuff and go into the race car? Folks, the racing season has concluded, and we're up here at Yancey Shepard's garage. I don't know exactly what to call it. I couldn't think of it the other.
Yancey's Automotive.
Yancey's Automotive. And thought we might talk with Yancey just a little bit about, since the season's over, what are you going to do with your motor, your car, and what all? And Yancey, I guess to start off with, I want to ask you, how would a racer determine whether or not he wants to store his motor or pull his motor and, you know, take it to a machine shop like yours and have somebody do something with it?
Well, first to start off, I always tell, you know, because I get that question all the time, because the first I tell everybody to just spend at least $20 at the car wash and wash everything as good as you can so that way you can look that race car all over. But as far as the motor goes, usually a motor will tell you when it's ready. We spoke of that yesterday, but it'll tell you because it'll start acquiring leaks that it didn't have in the beginning, and this and that, and if a person's real good at keeping track of laps and how many nights they have on them and how high they turned them, But I recommend backing off the valve springs, and a simple leak down will show you immediately what is going on inside the cylinder, how much dirt is got inside there, and so on and so forth, as far as valve job getting lazy. And then once they vac out the valves, I'll just run an average spring test, and just make sure they're all staying nice and even and all that, but a lot of it depends on how many nights it's got on it. I usually recommend going on the sport mods, I recommend 35 to 40 nights, whereas A mods about 20 nights, start looking and checking it pretty good, but about 30 nights they start wearing the valve springs, I know. But there's some guys that run them 60 nights. I've had customers in the past that get 60 nights, but they're one of those guys that are just really on top of their motors. If it loses 10 pounds in a valve spring, they're done. They change all of them. They just are that way. And but usually a motor will tell you, and that's why we get a lot of calls, because you can tell them to check this, and check this, and but no, the leak down and just testing the valve springs will tell you majority of what all you got.
Yeah. Coming from the layman's point of view, or standpoint, however you want to put that, what is a lay down test? What exactly?
You mean a leak down?
A leak down. I'm sorry, leak down test. What?
Leak down. You'll have two gauges, and actually, I got a gauge over there. It'd be real easy to show, but you get a leak down tester. You back off the rocker arms, and this is going to shoot air into the cylinder. And you'll put it up to 100 pounds, and then whatever's bleeding by, it will show you on the other gauge how many pounds is leaking away, like as if you had 90%, 97%, 80%, and usually if customers call me, and if they're around 88 to 90, they're tired.
It's time to do it.
Yeah, and because then anymore, I started about 2 years ago, a lot of the motors, I started leaking them right off the dyno just to know what they left with and all that stuff, and it is a lot more labor, but yet at least you can... the guys that are spending a lot of money on the aluminum motors and all that stuff, you can say, okay, it had this when we started, and now you're down 10%. Well, it's going somewhere, so we know it's leaking. So
for me to understand this better, and hopefully anybody that...
Well, I probably didn't put it in layman's terms.
No, I think you did. I'm just saying, I guess I'm trying to paraphrase or re-say what you already said, but... what it would be then, either the rings are leaking or there's a valve that's leaking.
Yeah, a valve's leaking, and usually when a valve's leaking, that means that the valve guide is starting to wear and, get the valve to float and it ain't hitting the seat properly straight and all that. Or you've let the valve springs get tired too. If the valve springs get tired, then the motor will go into valve float a lot quicker, and it'll actually beat the seat wider. Right. Today's cylinder heads are so much better than cylinder heads of the past. They ain't as bad about it, but they still float the valves. We all turn them too high.
Okay, so pretty much a racer's going to know. I mean, like you say, a guy that keeps up with stuff and is on top of what's going on with the motor, he's going to have a pretty good idea whether or not he wants to take that motor and rebuild it, or whether he's going to store it.
Yeah, exactly. Most of them, I just tell them, because there's some people that just don't want to touch the motor. They're afraid they're going to hurt something, and then those are the guys that'll just bring them in and let us leak them and do all that stuff. And that's a couple $100 deal, for new gaskets and all the new stuff, change the oil and all that. But that will tell them definitely yes or no, we need to rebuild this.
Okay, if a guy decides that he does want to rebuild the motor, and say he's going to bring it into you, then what kind of a procedure would you go through to kind of check that out as to what it was you were going to do with that motor?
As far as, if it gets rebuilt, then it's going to get new rings, it's going to get a valve job, all new bearings, oil pump, timing chain, and then, we always check the valve guides and all that stuff for wear. Race motors really, if the rocker arm geometry is proper or correct, they're not bad about, they ain't like an everyday car. They're not bad about wearing guides, but everyday cars are better too, But no, like I say, once they go to the rebuild stage, then they pretty get all the wear items replaced.
Okay, so more or less a complete motor rebuild.
Exactly, valve springs, all that stuff. Everything gets checked, and it's actually harder, I think, in my eyes, is to rebuild a motor than just build a new one, because a new one, everything's new, you're checking all the specs and all that stuff, and you kind of know where everything should be. Whereas, if you get a motor that needs rebuilt, you got to check double of everything because of the fact that it's wearing everywhere. Whereas a new cylinder head, you know the guides are new, you know where you need to put them, and it's just usually a lot more labor intensive to redo a motor. To me,
So I guess when I asked that question, I was having some brain fade, but it would be not like if you took your family car in and say you had one valve that was bad, they would probably just replace that one part.
Exactly.
Where in race application, you're going for the whole thing.
Yeah, if you got one bad, they're all bad.
Okay,
you know,
so
like as far as pistons and any more as far as crankshafts or anything, if they're, I mean, not that a crank would be bad unless we magnaflux it and it was busted or something, but usually I don't really find them cracked. They usually crack on their own, and then you get them. You know? But no, I usually don't. You know, you can bring in the flat tappet stuff, and you know you'll have a lobe trying. It ain't going flat. It ain't flat. It's just trying to go flat. And you caught it before. You know that happens a lot. So you know you get a new camshaft, new lifters, and that also too when you knock the lobe off, that has a lot to do. Valve springs play a big part in race engines.
Okay. If the guy is going to store the motor, which, like I say, the biggest investment probably in the whole car, you're talking about the motor. What are some of the things that a guy really needs to do? I mean, boy, you're the motor builder and the machinist. If anybody ought to know, because you see all these problems as they come in later on. But what is it that he really needs to do now to store that motor so that come next spring when he gets ready to get that thing out there, it's not going to be the first night and whoops, look what happened here. If the guy is going to store the motor, which, like I say, the biggest investment probably in the whole car, you're talking about the motor, what are some of the things that a guy really needs to do? I mean, boy, you're the motor builder and the machinist. If anybody ought to know, because you see all these problems as they come in later on. But what is it that he really needs to do now to store that motor so that come next spring when he gets ready to get that thing out there, it's not going to be the first night and whoops, look what happened here.
Exactly.
What's going on?
That's happened in the past. For one, I recommend getting all the water out or you know, pull the block drains and all that stuff, because freezing, you know, whether that car's going to set out in the cold, you know, because some people just can't put them inside. But I usually tell everybody, you know, once again, the leak down test, you know, because that'll tell you about everything. But everything checks out okay. You leave all the rock, change the oil first, you know, because you can leave that oil in there, but the minute you start up in the spring, all the contaminants in the oil will separate from the oil, and yet they're still in the motor, and people will fire that up and they're separated, and you'll get a big gulp of contaminants, you know, sludge, and it's hard to believe in a race motor how much, you know, extra fuel and just everything will get inside the oil.
And dust.
Yeah,
dirt,
and people don't think that, but their race engines, you know, that's what they're. You know, we sit there and breathe the stuff in. They're doing the same thing. No matter how good an air filter we got, it's going to get in there. But, you know, I usually tell people to just, you know, if all the leak down tests out okay, change the oil, run it a little bit just to get that new oil circulating in there so you ain't got no contaminants on the bearings. And then turn around and spray WD-40 in the cylinders and back the rockers off. And, you know, don't turn it over because then you're going to open up other valves. But you know, just pretty much give her a good once over, see if there's any leaks, anything going on, and other than that it should be fine. It's just, you know, make sure there's no water in it or there's antifreeze in it, and change that oil and get the valves backed off. Okay,
since we're under the hood, let's say, what about the carburetor and the fuel system? What would a person want to do with that? I mean, you know, my lawnmower, I put stabilizer or whatever in there, and that helps that. But what about it?
Race gas does have a certain life to it. It's hard to tell when, but I always tell my customers, just drain that cell, run the car out of fuel, and leave it, you know, especially if it's alcohol. Whereas, you know, when you get opinions on that, well, if you drain it all out, the fuel line's going to crack and this, I'm not a believer in that. I just tell them to change the filter, but then I always recommend pulling the carburetor apart, pull the bowls off of it, see if it's dirty, see if it needs an overhaul or anything, but and then spray WD-40 inside there so that stuff won't dry out and corrode, and you know, it's just a good time, you know, spray WD-40 all over just to keep that thing from collecting dust and dirt and and leaving the old fuel inside it, because then come springtime, that thing will look like a sprinkler.
Yeah.
It'll just leak, and holes will be loose, and it's hard to believe that Mother Nature will do that to them, but they will. You know? A lot of people wait till the last minute, so springtime we're usually ordering 25 carb kits and rebuilding carburetors, but you know, it's just gaskets and stuff. But you know, if people play that little bit of time, because it's only time, if they do just what they're supposed to do, that stuff will last a long time.
Okay, since we're still under the hood, let's talk about air breathers. Is this the time to get rid of that old air breather? I mean, I'm sure it's not something that you're going to want to keep around, because it's probably served its purpose, and it's probably time to move on to another one.
I'm a big fan of just using a Wix air filter. They're relatively inexpensive. I always tell my customers change them every night, because it might look
really?
like,
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, because they're so cheap to collect dust, and they'll lose so much horsepower if they get dirty, that if they keep that air filter fresh, you know, it's going to stay fresh as far as collecting particles and everything out of the air, and you know, the seal stays soft and everything. You know, that thing, you take it through the car wash, you take it through everything. Well, the minute you hit it with the car wash, that dust turns to mud, and then it really clogs up, and they don't realize it. You know, some people put a carb cap on it or stuff, but I just recommend, because that is the cheapest way to keep dirt out of your motor.
Every week.
I am, but you know, it just seems so cheap to do.
How much we talking about for every week? What would one cost a week?
They cost me, I order them like 50 at a time, and they cost me about $5.
$5.
Yeah. And I can sell them for $5. I do, just to my customers and stuff, just so they put a new one on. You know, just a standard air filter. You know, they're made by Wix. But anyway, as far as the fuel system goes, you know, if your part's starting to see your pump get a little wet, the diaphragm could be getting lazy in it, I recommend just buy a rebuild kit or just get a new one, because that's what's making the power. You know, it's got to have fuel to make power. And if people, you know, I don't know, there's 10 different ways to go about the same result, but I just recommend taking the whole thing apart and the whole fuel system apart, just make sure there's nothing in it, and get all the fuel out of it, and then it'll be perfectly fine in the spring.
Okay. What about hoses? Radiator
hoses?
Yeah.
Oh, if you run.
Is that something you replace every? I've never owned a race car, because I'm trying to think. Wow, what would I want to do?
You know, if they get mushy, that's kind of a hard thing to say. Street stocks, yeah, because those things are notorious for running hot some of the times. You know, so I definitely replace the radiator and the hoses, because you know, once you get a radiator hot so many times, you wash it so many times, the fins get laid over, and they start calling later in the year and saying, oh, my motor's running hot. Well, for one, you're in the middle of August and it's 110 degrees out, or two, you know, they've just washed it so many times and the tubes in the radiator are made out of aluminum. Well, they get hot and cold, they'll finally just close up and won't flow water.
Okay.
Then you throw a new radiator, and then all of a sudden your stuff's fixed, and you're thinking, well, that old radiator was junk. Well, no, it's just because it's been through so many heat cycles that it's just shrunk back down, and it just won't flow no water.
All right. Okay. Now, I think that pretty well covers the hood. Can you talk anything about power steering or?
Power steering, I know that's.
Now, I think that pretty well covers the hood. Can you talk anything about power steering or?
Power steering, I know that's.
Brake system, stuff like that.
The braking system, I just recommend telling people to, just change the fluid in it, and watch out.
Now, you want to do that in the winter when you're doing this maintenance thing, but
because a pint of brake fluid is $2, and the braking on a dirt car, a pavement car, anything gets so hot that it breaks down just like oil does. I actually went to school on all the additives and everything, but they just people don't understand that they really need to change their brake fluid too, as well as just like brake pads. None of us do it. It seems like if we got a good pedal, that we think we're fine.
Everything's fine.
But that plays a big role in it, because if the brake fluid breaks down and it starts separating, it's just like oil. It's going to not work and do its hydraulic system.
Is that from the heating and cooling where the brake fluid is the I don't know what you want to call it, not necessarily the chemical makeup, but it's something's going to change.
Yeah, it's going to change, and I don't remember what kind of process they called it when brake fluid goes through a certain cycle. But it's just like anything else. You change your training fluid, you change why people never change the brake fluid, but we all are guilty of it, and I am too. If the brake pedal's hard, we think we got a good one, and it's hard to believe how big of a difference it will make.
Same thing with power steering, though. I mean, or does it get as hot?
I don't know.
Never done that much.
No, I've never really messed with that too much. It seems like if it starts leaking, I'll change it. But I've just, knock on wood, have never really messed.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good subject because I've never really thought about really changing the power steering fluid. Yeah. Like I say, it is oil based also.
Yeah. What about? Let's move on further back behind the motor just a little ways, and what about the transmission? Are we going to do anything with that?
Well, if it's a Bird or a Brent or a Falcon, they'll kind of tell you when they're getting tired. You know, you'll change the oil in it, and you see little pieces from the clutch material and stuff. Whereas, like, you know, you can usually tell when the clutch is getting bad on those, the pedal will be down by the floor. Whereas a street stock, you know, I'd recommend at least replacing the face every time. Mm-hmm. The faceplate.
See, I think we were talking about power steering. I appreciate you doing this here in the middle of your business day. I know you got customers coming in and out, but I appreciate you taking your time to sit down with us. But I think we were talking about power steering.
Yeah, we're talking about power steering and transmissions, and thanks for letting me do this, because this might answer a lot of questions and knock on wood, save me a few phone calls. But, you know, everybody should know to do it, and I don't usually have a lot of time to help people with that, you know, because I'm busy with other things. But as far as transmissions go, it's so relatively inexpensive on a Burt and a Bren to rebuild those. Plus, like a street stock and everything, you know, those guys are usually pretty inept as far as knowing when to rebuild and all that stuff, because their 3 speeds will jump out of gear. But as far as the power glides, are different. You know, some guys are running the power glides with no torque converters and sport mods. I would 100% tell them to rebuild the transmission over the winter, because they're like Bouchard charges $700 to $800 for a complete brand new one ready to go. So I don't know what their rebuild program, but I know a few people here in town that rebuild them and do a great job at it. So, you know, just find your local guy that does it. I don't know who to recommend. I know a couple guys, but I don't really want to recommend them because I don't know if they want me to. You know? So, you know, if they told me to, but no.
Well, if you recommended one, then probably somebody else would be upset because you didn't say something. So
yeah, it's a catch-22.
Yeah, you're best to leave it alone.
Yeah. But as far as that, you know, I recommend always changing joints over the winter, always changing rear
That's what
gears.
I was getting ready to ask you about, the drive shaft.
They take a punishment.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they take a literal beating, and we've all seen drive shafts on the racetrack. And but no, definitely replace the U-joints, you know, take the rear end out, and you know, if you want to, I charge $50 to knock one apart. I don't really want to do a bunch of them, but you know, there's a lot of people in this town that knows how to do them. But you know, that's the first thing. If a rear end or a transmission fails, it tears up everything, and as well as it can hurt you.
Yeah, well,
if drive shaft comes through the floor, boy, you look out. I mean, it'll hurt you bad.
I was just up at I-35 and happened to have a in-car camera. I think it was in Peeler's car, I believe.
Blake or Jim?
Blake's. And just happened to be the race I had the in-car camera in. His yoke broke, I believe it was, and caught a guy right behind him and
nose
went through his broke his
broke
nose.
Front of his helmet. And everything. I remember.
So
that.
Yeah, you're right, man. There's some bad stuff could happen there.
It's, you know, I mean, we all do all the best we, you know, especially them as far as car builders and stuff. Everybody does as much as they can for safety, but yet they gripe about new safety rules. But that's something you always got to watch for is safety. You know, and we all don't want to do it, but we do. You know.
So you say then, okay, U-joints on the drive shaft, and then what about the rear end?
Well,
do you rebuild that, replace the gears, or what?
You can. You know, you can, but a lot of times
is that a necessity every year?
No, definitely the grease change. You know, but a lot of racers change the grease periodically because they're changing gears. You know, but a rear end will usually tell you take the gear grease out of it, and it'll be metallic-y looking or something, and you'll find a piece of a tooth laying in there, and it'll run just fine with that tooth broke off, but it will definitely get you later on down the road, so you have to address that issue. But no, you know, just change the fluids, and just that's why at step one is always, and when Larry Shaw, his boy Kevin, grilled that in my head. He goes, if you ever want to be a good racer, you must have a clean race car. He said, you know, you got to represent your race car just as well as you do yourself. And he said, you know, you keep that race car clean, you will find cracks and leaks and this and that, and you will be the guy with the most maintenance and doing the most maintenance at his house will be the one that will usually finishes first. You know?
I'm trying to remember. I think it's Brian Brown, I believe. I've heard him say it a couple of times, and I can't remember whether it was his grandpa or who it was that was telling him, but he said, you know, most of the races are won in the garage.
Exactly.
And like you say, the maintenance thing is such a big deal, and I hope that's what we're kind of getting across here
that's
today.
What we're trying to prove or bring up and grill into people's heads and stuff, because I actually started out drag racing, and drag racing, that car never really gets dirty or hit or nothing like that. But, you spend so much time on a drag race car cleaning it because you think, oh, well, what if I break this or what if I break that? I'm going at such a high rate of speed, but yet you're out there for 3 times the amount of time in a circle track car. But you'll see circle track racers not spend as much time on their car, and some of them are very, very good at it, but there's some of them that slack a little bit, and that's okay. I'm guilty of it too, but just maintenance is the key to winning.
No. Okay, I think we're back to the rear end. We got that far. Anything about shocks? I mean, do they need to be tested or anything?
I recommend sending the shocks and have them dynoed, but that ain't really a big deal as long as you remember in your head, how that shock somewhat felt before, but it's really tough to notice when a shock is going lazy. Real good racers, can know, the right rear's doing this or right left front or something. But I recommend, there's a lot of people around that's got a shock dyno. I recommend getting them dynoed just so you know what you got. I know this sounds like a lot of maintenance and a lot of stuff to do, but it's all a lot of stuff that don't cost a lot of money and will save you so much money in the long run.
In the long run,
you might be that winning car the first night out because you were ready in springtime.
Exactly. Okay, I think we're down to the chassis. I think wheel bearings.
Wheel bearings.
We didn't really talk about that, but there again, I don't race. How often do you replace wheel bearings?
I never really do.
Never do?
No, because a wheel bearing, like I say, it's another one that it'll look perfect, and if it's going to fail, it's just going to fail. I mean, like that, I have a young son that helps me, so he keeps me motivated, and I didn't race much last year, but my young son kept me, and we just would inspect all that stuff. That's once again, clean the car really good, look, and you'll know, because it'll have a little wiggle or something to it. That's something, that's easy enough to check, and what was I going to say? Like modifieds in the pull bars, it's so that's the whole traction point of a race car on a modified pull bar or lift arm. And if a person just takes that apart and gets all the grease from throughout the year that's been packed in that thing, because you just reach under there and grease it or WD-40 it, make sure it's loose, but you need to get in there and clean all that out. And, check all your Heims, because Heims, they'll just start wearing out too. And like I said, it's just general maintenance, but if that car is clean, and then I recommend taking like a solvent, if it's powder coated, some kind of easy solvent, wiping down the whole chassis, every place a weld is, and it will show. You will sit there and show.
You see a crack or whatever.
Just preventative maintenance, because that could be the one to bite you in the springtime, And it's simple to fix over the winter. It gives you something to do, get all your buddies around and stuff. But that's what I always recommend.
Boy, it sounds like it's quite an off-season thing to go through, and it's funny, but I bet you there are probably a few racers out there already that have already got it all done.
Probably. There's guys that are, I've had lots of customers, they always set dates, they're going to have car done by here and this and that, and or a lot of guys I know, they want their motor back and they want everything in line by Christmas. That's their date.
Really?
That they want to have that car ready, so they've already spent all the money, so they got all the following left of the winter and the time to save their money to get ready to go, to be prepared, and those are the guys that are pretty darn on top of things, and they're very successful at it. I'm actually the type of person, I learn a lot from them, because I think they're over maintaining, and but they're the ones in the winner circle a lot of times. So
we'll have to take a commercial break, but we'll be right back with more racing from Thunder Hill.
I suppose if a racer was going to leave the car pretty much together, let's say, he's going to want to store it in a certain way. What would that be?
Up in the air. I always recommend, that takes all the tension off everything as far as the springs and shocks and all that stuff. And you pretty much need it up in the air to really crawl around that car. So and most racers do, so that way they can take all the wheels and tires off, because they're going to hang that new body or re-letter or whatever they're going to do. But I always recommend to jack the car up as high as you can get that thing, so you can really get a good look of everything. I always recommend going through all the wiring and just at the connectors, just pull them, make sure nothing's going to loose, because those poor old cars take a beating. I mean, it's a wonder some of them stay together, especially springtime when the racetrack's heavy and rough and carrying on. It's a wonder that some of them even stay together. So
it truly is. Just recently, I think when I was down at Moberly, which the first time I'd been down there in about 8 years, but I actually had my car out on the track, and I was just amazed
how rough it actually
is. I mean, I know most promoters, I think, anymore really love to use the sheep's foot.
I know.
And
there's nothing wrong with that, but they don't understand when they sheep's footed how when a race car enters the corner, if you drive your everyday car around there, how that racetrack just feels like you're going over little bitty speed bumps. Well, that's why we're all buying these high dollar shocks and everything. And I'm not a promoter, so I don't know how to finish a racetrack, but it's so tough to keep that tire on the ground when you're going over little hills.
It's like a washboard.
Exactly. You see people,
and everybody knows how a washboard is when you drive over that.
Yeah, but you see people make it work over that. But just think about all the components in that race car shaking and carrying on, and those things live through that.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing sometimes, of how fast. And we're going 100 mile an hour probably on that kind of stuff.
Especially at Lakeside.
Oh, Lakeside, yes. But it's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we've pretty well covered the car.
Yeah, we have.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about the guy that drives it.
Oh, no.
I thought I would bring this up because just this year I've had the opportunity to actually race some RC with Jake Richards, and I think I relayed to you the other day the story about Jake was telling me about he might lose 10 pounds during a 25-lap race or during the course of an evening, how tired you actually are when you get out of the car after a 25-lap A-main. And we were talking about your case in particular, about how normally you are about 180-pounder, and this year you have kind of blossomed a little, mainly
because of the racing, because I didn't race this year, and that usually just kept me slimmer, or in shape better. I think I'm in shape because I'm always walking around here and doing stuff, but wow, I've really lost it. And you see a lot of older drivers. A perfect example is Rick Beebe. Whenever he came back to racing dirt and everything 3 or 4 years ago, it took Rick a long time. I think he was going to the gym and doing a lot of
build up his endurance.
Yes. He just would get so tired, especially when he first started. He had bought a Hughes car from me, and he just told me, he said, I don't have enough driver for the race car yet. And I was laughing about it. But Rick was a little older, but, I could just sit there and watch him just get in great shape, and you see these guys come in here, and I can't say nothing. I'm guilty of it because I'll think I'm in great shape. And like you said, Jake, you'll catch yourself holding your breath. He's exactly right. I'd never really thought about it until you said that yesterday. But it's true. You will get so wrapped up. So all of us sit around and eat our Thanksgiving and our turkeys and our candies and stuff. And it's terrible. Usually the first guy. And I've heard like Tim Carrick goes to the gym quite often and everything. But, Tim, he's just always fast. I mean, he's got to do some kind of program to keep himself in shape, and I'm not really the best person to be asking the question you're saying, but it is. The guys, you'll see them shine at the beginning of the year. The guys that went out and did the workouts or run or something. Like John O'Neill was always big about keeping himself in shape, and I always said I was going to go with him, but I never really made it with him. But,
well, I would think in the middle of the summer when that heat really comes on is when that would be another important. Well, I think I relayed to you. I interviewed Jason Myers, World of Outlaw champion again for the second year. And that was one of the things that he told me was he had an off-season workout program that he went through, and he felt like it really helped him when they got into the heat of the summer. But another thing I'd like to relate to everybody was I was at Valley this year for one of the sprint car races down there, and this young man who I'm sure wasn't over 21, which I think most people still think, hey, 21-year-old kid still in pretty good shape, went out, led the race. It had opened up probably a straightaway lead. Yellow flag comes out, and all of a sudden it's like he didn't have the speed or anything that he had in the early part of the race. I interviewed him after the race, or I went down and talked to him, and he says, I got tired. And I'm thinking, I didn't think race car drivers ever got tired. No, I would have thought your adrenaline would be flowing so much that you would just go.
Well, a perfect example, a friend of mine, he went and ran the ARCA race out there, and I just had to ask him when he got out of the car. I said, I know these things are probably easier than a dirt car and everything. And he goes, yeah, you got to fight them, but that's why you only see dirt cars running 25 or, sometimes the late models 50.
Yeah.
But you see them running that, whereas a pavement car, they can do it. Well, I think it's just the stress on the body. It's just the up and down and the braking and just everything about it. And it's just tough to say what is the best program to do. I mean, of course, running is going to be your best deal, but and that's opinion.
Who knows?
That's
yeah.
opinions,
Yeah.
But it is funny how you see people, and I've been guilty of it too, just get darn tired.
Yeah.
Those cars, especially if you got a tight car. So, I mean, it always seems like your mind's so stressed because it's tight, and you're kind of manhandling the thing, and you just kind of hold your breath and hang on.
I'm just going to ask this question because I just happened to think of it. Do you know or have you heard of any of the drivers that actually do any of these video games? I mean, do you think, or have you ever done it? Would that keep any of your senses sharper?
I've seen a lot of the dirt racers and customers of mine. They'll go out and all of them will get together and go out to that NASCAR or that kart place out there in Olathe, and it's in Olathe, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But anyway, I know they'll all get together because they have like winter leagues and stuff like that, and I know those guys get big into that. And then, of course, they all get souped up for the Chili Bowl. I know quite a few guys that go to that deal. But as far as playing the video games, I've never. They might be embarrassed to tell me that. That their son's whipping their butt, or I know my son sure can. He's way better at those games than me. But yeah, that would be something to keep your mind straight. As far because it's somewhat of a mental game anyway. So.
Well, okay, Yancey, I thoroughly have enjoyed this, and I certainly hope some of you folks out there, fans or racers, have enjoyed being able to sit down with Yancey and talk about, now that the season's over, some of the decisions you might be wanting to make as far as, do I keep the motor, do I rebuild it, what do I need to replace, what am I going to do, and I hope, as Yancey says, we've answered some of these questions, and it'll save a phone call.
Yeah.
Because I know I can look around, as you can see, and I know you've got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm sure that phone, I mean, it can be your... what do you want? Your best friend or your worst enemy, as they say.
Exactly. So we could do this. I forgot to cheer.
Yeah.
So we could do this. I actually just turn the thing off. I hate being that way, but it's just sometimes you just got to do something.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be interrupted, but
no,
it is. Hopefully everybody realizes that all the engine builders are there to help you, but you got to. They got to do their thing.
Man, Roger, that was some good information from Yancey Shepard at Yancey's Automotive in Smithville, Missouri. Appreciate Mike Kraft going out there. And it's always important to get the race cars ready over the winter because, if you don't get it done before you start that winter time and it sets in there, then it's just a problem.
You've got moisture problems, you've got alcohol problems that sit, and no, I thought that Yancey did an excellent job, and every time I see this, I learn something more about, preparing these cars for the next year.
Well, talking about next year, we're going to go out right now to the Clyde Ellis late model shootout at Lakeside Speedway with the MLRA, and that ought to about wrap up their season. You got some great racing. Stay with us right after this commercial break.
MLRA. Yeah. Feature race number 551 for the series. It is the second longest running continually operating dirt late model sanction in the country, according to time frame. It has contested the third most amount of races of any dirt late model sanction in the country. Next year will be the silver anniversary edition of the Lucas Oil MLRA. These drivers are going to double up. They're going to pull back in line behind the McCarthy Auto Group pace truck. Going to go 40 laps, $5,000 to win, $400 to start. Okay, guys, we got 40 laps here. 40 laps. Going to be a big race. Already left Rich on the race receiver, talking to the drivers one final time, giving them their final marching orders before we get set to go green. It'll be Dotson's race to start.
1B and 85. I need a nice even start off the turn 4. That do not fire to that white line.
field bunches up. The leaders make their way through the middle of turns 3 and 4. They're going to fire from the chalk as they enter the front straightaway. Here we go. Final race of the 2012 going green. Will Vaught, Mark Dodson, they're 3 wide for second. Eric Turner, Justin Asplin right there as well. Brad Looney making a hard charge. He'll roll to the outside of Asplin. Tony Jackson Jr. in the 56 to the inside of the number 77. Lap number 1 will go to the driver out of Crane, Missouri, Will Vaught. Mark Dodson going in second. Eric Turner third. Brad Looney fourth. Justin Asplin fifth. Tony Jackson Jr. 6th, David Turner 7th, Matt Johnson 8th, John Anderson 9th. Last night's winner Kyle Burke here in the early going will hold on to that 10th position, but he's got the Simpson brothers in tow right behind him. Vaught flashing the rainbow flags, 2 laps complete. Here's the roll on lap number 3. Brad Looney has jumped up now into that 3rd position. Looney started 8th to 3rd in a lap and a half. Boy, you got to wonder if he'll have anything tonight at the end of the 40-lap main event. Will Vaught holding a comfortable lead right now. Dodson exiting turn 4.
Yellow, turn 3.
And we're going to have a yellow flag over in turn number 3. Looks like the 24 of Bill Layton involved, the 1M of Rob Moss, the 8 of Sonny Finley. Chad Simpson in the 25 also involved in that accident as well. We've got a multi-car pileup over in turn 3.
Sean, did you see that?
So we've got 2 laps complete. We're going to get going one more time. Will Vaught will start the race. He'll bring along Brad Looney and Mark Dodson in tow. Brad Looney now jumped up to that 2nd spot on the restart. Oh my, everybody hard on the loud pedal down the front straightaway. They'll roll off 2 down the back chute. Vaught your leader, Looney runs 2nd. Eric Turner in the 33X 3rd. David Turner now up into that 4th spot. That'll push Mark Dodson back to 5th. David Turner started 7th, knocked off 3 spots rather, check that, and he's digging on Turner for 3rd. Turner in that Moyer victory circle pulls to the left rear quarter panel of Eric Turner. They'll now roll back wheel to front wheel. Now they'll pull side by side, door to door through 3 and 4. Turner in the blue 33X up 1 group higher. Drag race down the front straightaway into turn 1. David Turner still right there. Turner still pushing the issue. Turner now pulls away nearly a car length. Turner fights back down the back straightaway. Excellent battle for 3rd right now between a couple of good veteran drivers. As our front 2 have checked out there 3/4 of the straightaway ahead, the 1 and the 14, your front 2 cars. Battle there. It's a Turner battle royale for the 3rd spot. Here's Eric up top, David down low, John Anderson right there, Chris Simpson right there, Mark Dodson back a couple of car lengths.
Okay, bring the yellow out. Let's go yellow.
Car breakaway, yellow flag out on the racetrack. We're going to throw the caution. The number 25 of Chad Simpson slow over in turn number 4. That'll bring out our 2nd yellow.
Five behind the 21, 5 behind 21.
2, 32.
2 in front of the 32.
Now they're ready to go as soon as they have a yellow.
All right, so the caution lights are off. 6 laps complete. Here we go. Oh, contact there between Eric Turner and Brad Looney on the restart. And Brad Looney will take the 2nd spot. Chris Simpson going to restart. Simpson roll to the inside of the 33X. And David Turner on the outside of Eric Turner on turn number 2. And David Turner run out of real estate. They'll shuffle him back now. He'll hold on to the 5th spot. Still right there in the mix. He didn't lose too much speed. Will Vaught out front. Brad Looney runs 2nd. 3rd, Eric Turner. 4th, Chris Simpson. 5th. It'll be the 15 of David Turner. Kyle Burke now up into the 6th spot. Good run here for Kyle Burke as he started 10th, now to 6th. Vaught rolls off 4, 8 laps complete here. Roll on lap number 9. Will Vaught, your pole setter, the highest car in passing points. Won his heat race from the tail earlier on tonight to earn the top spot. Brad Looney started 8th, but he's definitely nailed the setup here, at least in the 1st quarter of the race. Here's we've got 9 scored. They'll come around this time. Will be 4th of the way home as Chris Simpson now gets a good run. He'll slide around the front of the 33X. Kyle Burke right behind Eric Turner. Burke with the 14. He'll go to the outside in turn 3. As they roll through the middle of the corner. Off 4. Give Kyle Burke now the 4th position. So we got a decent battle up run. A good battle for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. As Eric Turner's right there as well. Not going away. Boy, Kyle Burke looks fast. His race car coming to him. It took him a little bit last night to get up to speed. But once he did, he was absolute dynamite. Bought now down to the low groove in the middle of 1 and 2. Looney there as well, about 5 car lengths or so back. And it's half a straightaway to the 32 of Simpson, the 14 of Burke. $5,000 on the line this evening. Will be the first car to go 1 lap down. We get a long green flag run. We'll see how lap traffic plays into this race. Added a nice element of suspense to the course of the show last night. Some late race slicing and dicing, moving some guys up to higher finishing positions late in the going. Buck now slide around the 8 of Sonny Finley. Brad Looney will be the next to do so. Here's where it's going to get interesting in a handful of laps for Will Bolles. He's going to have 3 cars right in front of him. The 2 of Grant Youngins, the 29 of Bill Coons, and also the 3K of Jason Bodenhammer. Guys. Looney now gets around the 8 of Sonny Finley. Chris Simpson and Kyle Burke will be the next 2 to do so. Oh my, Ryan Gustin on a rail, exiting turn number 2. Ryan Gustin started 14th, and he's trying to make the pass for 5th. Oh my. Driver out of Marshalltown, Iowa. Absolutely barnstorming through the United States Modified Touring Series, widely regarded as the top modified division in the country. Gustin around his 14 wins in the Grassroots Racing Modified, built by Jason Hughes, also splits his time, also does a little bit of time in a late model as well. Picked up a $25,000 to win mod race. Looking to certainly turn some heads now as he's made the pass. It appears, yes, he has for 5th. It'll be Wilbon still out front. Brad Looney trying to get around the 29 of Bill Coons. Kyle Burke there right behind the 32 of Chris Simpson. Good action right there for the 3rd and 4th spots. Chris Simpson running 3rd to the 32. Kyle Burke back up underneath the 32 of Simpson. Now he'll pull his right front to his left rear. Simpson now run to the outside of the 29 of Coons. That will put Kyle Burke right in line behind him as well. Burke will go a group higher as they exit turn number 4. Battle for the 3rd and 4th spots. As Fox back up in lap traffic, 3rd and 4th place are coming on the 14 of Brad Looney. Chris Simpson has now closed the gap to 3 to 4 car lengths. Jason Bodenhammer, the lap car, the only one standing between the 2nd and 3rd place cars as Vaught has his hands full with the 24 Bill Layton as he rolls down into turn 1. The track's starting to get nice and slick in the turns. 22 complete of 40, so we're just past the halfway point. Kyle Burke now trying to get around the 3K of Bodenhammer. Ryan Gustin trying to do so as well. Burke will do so that time at the line. Gustin's now pulled even. Vaught with a half straightaway advantage. He's around the 24 of Layton. Second and third is where it's at right now. Fourth and fifth coming fast though. No lap cars between Looney, Simpson, Burke, and Guston. Those 4 cars battling for 2 through 5. Randy Boltinghouse down to the flag stand showing the lap markers to hold your line flag. Vaught now will set his sights on the 58 of Cosgrove, Iowa's Dave Eckridge. Looney hanging on to second. Boy, Brad Looney. 8th and second. He's passed 6 cars, but he's been in second the majority of the going here so far. Chris Simpson looks like he'll make a little bit of contact with the 14. 25 down. Boy, Mike Knight has prepared one absolute dynamite of a racetrack. And it's hard enough to do it one night and to get it spot on, but he's done it twice. What a fantastic serve. Boy, these guys are just putting on an absolute show out here. Kyle Burke now trying to get around the 14 of Looney. Burke looks like he's coming to life. Boy, Brett Looney, if he had a rear view mirror, it would be full of dirt late models. Dave Eckridge has pulled off the racetrack to score the 58 off the speedway here on lap number 28. Kyle Burke right there on the 14 as Chris Simpson has now faded a little bit. Simpson trying to do battle, unable to get around the 14. Now we'll see if Kyle Burke has anything. Burke will pull to the inside of the 14 of Brad Looney. They'll at the flag stand this time. They've got the lap car, the 24 of Layton, holding up Kyle Burke's line, so it'll call the line right behind Looney. Vaught still comfortably out front, second and third close, fourth and fifth close. 28 down. Vaught completes lap 29 that time by. Now Brad Looney's put 3 to 4 car lengths back on the 14 of Burke. Vaught off 2 down the back chute. Now Chris Simpson back up in the mix as well. 2, 3, and 4, about equal distance between them. 2, 3, 4, and 5, I should say. We touched on a minute ago, Ryan Gusson from 14th to 5th, Brad Looney from 8th to 2nd, Kyle Burke from 10th up into 3rd, Chris Simpson up from 11th to 4th. All the while your pole sitter is showing why he's the car to beat. Travis Dickus next on the hit list for the 1B. We'll see if he can get him here. So choose his line hitter and set the car turn 3 right on the bottom of the Lakeside Speedway. Not now. We'll see with the 21 of Dickus. He'll get around him exiting turn number 2. Ryan Guston will get around the lap car, the 1M of Rob Moss. 34 complete here, racing on lap 35, 5 laps to go. Will it be Will Vaught's second win of the season? Boy, it's been a long time since he cracked victory lane. They've got a car off the racetrack right there. As the final laps here, the 2012 season click off. Looking like Vaught's still going to be the car to beat. Brad Looney now trying to get around the 29 of Spencer Dirks for the second spot. Not for the second spot, rather, but to hold his second spot. Trying to put the 29 of Dirks a lap down. Racing here, lap number 38. Brad Looney with his hands full trying to get around the 29 of Spencer Dirks. I'd say his patience level about to run out. He will slide around him that time.
Watching with the men.
And the field will come around to see the white flag next time by. Will Vaught down the back straightaway. Into turn 3. Off of the number 4 turn. One more time around. Great Missouri's Will Vaught. Trying to pick up the win here at Lakeside Speedway. Looney runs second. Burke third. Chris Simpson fourth. Ryan Gustin fifth. Will Vaught going to roll into turn 3 and 4 just like he's done the first 39 times off the number 4 turn. Give the Clyde Ellis Late Model Showdown $5,000 victory to the one of Will Vaught. Second place is going to go to the number 14 of Brad Looney. Kyle Burke runs third. Chris Simpson runs fourth. And Ryan Gustin finishes fifth.
Yeah, go ahead and mark right rears off the top 5.
Got the winner of the late model feature here tonight, Lakeside Speedway, Will Vaught. Will, I wouldn't call it a Sunday drive, man, but you got out front and you were just gone.
Yeah, track position here means a lot. We're fortunate enough after the incident in the heat race to start on the pole, and you know, the good Lord helped me make decisions on the race car, and the car was great. I was being patient throughout the first of the race and kind of keeping the cars underneath me, and you know, throughout the middle when I caught lap cars, I started driving a little harder, and you know, we had the best car tonight.
I was going to say, good heat race, and one of the few races where somebody come up from the back and actually won. Got up to the front and did that, but then, like I say, the A-main, boy, that track, it just almost looked like a mirror out there. A lot of reflection. Was it hard to drive on that? Was it really that much of a dry slick?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you got to focus so much on your race car and keep the tires underneath you, and not get, you know, anxious on the throttle. And it was one of them things that's you want to do the same repetitive motion every lap. So you know, I thought the car, I could have been a little better. I know what to do next time I come back, but you know, yeah, it's super slick.
Once again, too, it has to be kind of a special win tonight, too, with it being kind of the end of an era with Cowboy and Harriet running the MLRA. So, man, you got to treasure this one a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Cowboy and Harriet, they've been good to the sport, and I think they're the most fair series there is out there in this region, and you know, I think everybody respects them, and they're good people, and I think they're still going to be around. But you know, being Lucas bought at the series, I know it's going to grow. I'm looking forward to running for Dan Robinson.
Well, welcome back from the Saturday night racing at the Lakeside Speedway. Fantastic racing.
You know, that's it's fitting for the end of the season that this kid Vaught won that heat race, tore up his car, had to get into the intermission, and they had to work on the car during intermission. Everybody jumps in and gets the car going. Then he goes out and leads the whole race for entire time.
Yeah, and it's
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is. And then it happens right there when you're sitting on the pole and you're looking at your car all tore up. But we've been there, so we understand that. The part I can't believe, Roger, is this is the end of the season. We started this season, and it has just flew by. And our thanks goes out to Mike Kraft, field reporter, and his crew, and his wife, and for all their work in it, and David Cheveria. You know, last night I was watching the 35th Belleville Nationals, and that was a David Cheveria program. Absolutely excellent. We started the season with the USMTS at Humboldt, and we went right on through, right up here to Lakeside. We've had World of Outlaw. We've had the best short track racing you can get anywhere. And I'm proud of the program.
I am too. I like the in-car cameras. I like everything that's been done, and our show has been a very professional racing program.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
It's good. It's been fine. We'll brag about it. I hope anybody else likes it, but we enjoyed watching it.
It's fine.
And we're going to see you next year. We'll be back with the Grassroots Racing Show. We're also working on a couple of other ventures. One is the Hillbilly Hotspot, and we're working on a new show called Hey, Whatever Happened To, and then you fill in the blank. We'll introduce that to you in February. Guys, have a good winter. Thanks for watching.